thank you very much, Josiah, Corey, and Craig, for having me come out here to Country Carpenters in Hebron, Connecticut. It's a beautiful facility. I've never been here before. You guys have been advertising forever with me, and this is a very sweet pleasure.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for getting together with us.
Yeah. What I wanted to do was start a series of talking about the process of building a farm for somebody. Okay. And I thought today might be a good topic to start with the purchase of the land.
Yeah. Yep.
I know you guys really don't purchase the land, but you always come to the land that has already been purchased. So maybe you might know some of the things that people stumble upon when they buy that land.
Yeah, so typically what we recommend to customers, especially if they're purchasing land, is to go to the town that they're looking at the land in and trying to get a copy of the site plan for that land, if it exists. Very important to understand where the wetlands are, where the boundaries are, the topography of the land, and so forth. And it's always important to engage your town early on in these projects as well, because depending on what you're looking to do on the property, the town can guide you as to, the do's and don'ts and what is the best land area that would be suited for your project.
Nice. That's good advice. I think when you're in the town, you should also ask about if you can bury the horse there, because that's an issue with a lot of towns in Connecticut.
Yeah, and there is, I know that there are certain criteria for residential areas and agricultural areas. So I know that the rules are different for each town and each state, depending on where you are. And it's important to understand all those rules right up front. And like I was saying, you definitely want to try to get a copy of the site plan, which will show, like I said, the setbacks. And then if there's any existing structures on the property as well, there might be a well on the property, there might be septic on the property, depending on what is there. So it's important to identify where those are, as well as wetlands. That's another big one in terms of setbacks, and especially with agricultural type settings.
I also heard that height is an issue.
Yep, so many towns have height restrictions. That's another important thing to talk to the town about. And all of this is really good to do in advance, because one of the things that we don't want to have happen is to get so far into the process and have a customer get very excited about a project only to find out later that when they talk to the town that they're not going to be able to do what it is they're looking to do. So height restrictions are another consideration, especially when you get into horse barns or into these larger barns. They are pretty tall in some cases. But we also work with customers with different structures that are a little bit shorter in height that still work, for horses and for animals as well.
I think one of the biggest things they should probably first figure out is if they're going to do a private structure or a commercial structure.
Yes, that will
that's
also
huge.
Yep, that will also factor in, and it's all those parameters that are really important to discuss with the town, with the zoning department, with the building department. Even sometimes the town health department or sanitarian wants to get involved, especially if there's animals, because
Right.
that has its own set of rules. But knowing all of that information and engaging your town in advance is really important, because like I said, then you're not setting yourself up for disappointment later.
Absolutely.
You can come in and with all of that, understanding all of those rules and regulations, and kind of gear your project towards what the town will allow you to do.
Right. So, all right, we have the land,
Yep.
and we've got it. We got the closing, and we're all ready to start building. How do you figure out where you're going to put the structure?
So that's a great question. So it is based really off the topography of the land. So ideally, you want to have a nice flat site, but that's not always possible. Sometimes, where the perfect spot for the barn, there happens to be a slope or kind of a gradual hill or whatever. And so there's different ways to deal with that. So like I said, if it's a flat site, it's very easy. If it's a sloped site, depending on the slope of the land, foundation contractors can dig into that slope a little bit and do what they call a stepped foundation. So at one side of the building, usually the access point is what we call at grade, the lowest level, and then the foundation we'll step up from there to create sort of a retaining wall behind the structure. Other slopes other plots of land are more dramatic, where the slope is pretty steep. And in those cases, we have customers that will do what they call a bank barn, which is they cut into the hill. They usually have a lower access point, but in that particular case, a lot of times they're doing a full foundation, and they'll put an engineered deck on top of that foundation, which is kind of nice because in most of the structures that creates sort of a 3-story structure, so
Right.
you can use the lower level either for the animals or for farm equipment, and then the first level can be either storage or for the animals, and then you have the loft up above that for, say, hay storage.
That was one of my favorite barns I've worked out of, was a bank barn.
Yeah, yep.
Because of the having it in the ground, it was so warm in the winter and cool.
Cooler in the summer.
In the summer.
Yes,
It was
exactly.
beautiful.
Exactly. That makes it very nice.
I was a assistant scoutmaster at one point, and you bring a bunch of boys to go camping for the weekend, and they get to pick where their tents go. And it's always funny because you get to see where they pick, one goes right on top of the hill, the other one, they all go for the flat spots.
Yeah.
So one time it was raining, and that night it rained. That morning you could just hear them all. The one that picked the bottom of the hill and the flat spot was all filled up in a lake.
Yep.
And it was just water flowing through them. It was just really a quick way to learn the water and how the land is used.
Right, exactly, and that comes into play with placing your barn as well.
Exactly.
You want to think about those kinds of things, so you're thinking about drainage, how that water's going to affect that structure, and obviously with any structure, you really want the water away.
Yes, you do.
So picking the lowest point might not always be the best
Nope.
option. And I think if I remember from my scouting days, they used to recommend that you dig a trench around your tent,
Right.
in case it rained, with a drainage point.
Yes.
So,
Well, they didn't. We never did that, but that's a good idea. So I guess the next consideration is, access to the property.
yes, that's also very important. So one of the things that we run into a lot, especially in rural areas, is problems with access. So that's one of the things that you'll want to look at, again, right up front, is to figure out how the equipment,
Right.
the construction equipment
Right.
is going to get in and out.
Right.
Usually rule of thumb for us is that we tell our customers, if you can get a cement mixer in and out of the property, then our trucks can make it in and out.
Yep.
Now that works great for our local deliveries, but we do ship all over the country, and in those cases we're using tractor trailers.
Right.
And there have been cases when a tractor trailer just can't make it down that driveway. Many times the property is up on a hill, and there are switchbacks and so forth that make it difficult for a tractor trailer to navigate. And in those cases, they usually just set up a shuttle. So they'll bring in a smaller flatbed,
Right.
and they'll offload onto that, and then bring the
What do they
product up.
use to offload your kits?
So it varies. It can be a skid steer that's got a pretty heavy weight capacity, a lull, which is basically a four-wheel drive forklift, or a payloader with
Right.
forks, or a large farm tractor with forks. But
Yep.
it's usually a forklift unload.
So what's the weight of a kit
Again, it varies.
on the size of the truck?
So
structure?
yeah. So many of our structures, we're shipping out tractor trailers at 30,000-40,000 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Of load on them.
Right,
So yeah,
right.
they're pretty heavy, those
That's a
kits.
heavy load.
But they are packed in small enough packages where you're able to move the product with a
Nice.
machine.
Nice. It's a great idea that you have kits like that.
Yes. Yep.
How many do you sell a year?
We're producing north of 100 barns a year, and like I said, shipped all over the country and some outside of the country as well.
Nice. Nice. How long have you been here?
I myself have been here for 3 years,
Fantastic.
but I've known about the company for over 25.
Great. And you're celebrating 50 years this year.
50 years. Yeah.
Man, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yep, it's an incredible place, and it's steeped in history too,
Yes.
which is wonderful.
Well, and it's family run, and you gotta love that.
Yes.
You gotta love that. A lot of things aren't anymore.
Yep.
So I think that should wrap up this discussion, and I'd like to get together with you and talk about the actual structures in another time.
That sounds great.
Perfect.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.